Bienvenidos al quinto vídeo del Environmental Sciences Course de IEI High School. Continuamos nuestra tarea de abordar temas muy importantes sobre el calentamiento global y el cambio climático. Hasta ahora hemos tratado el tema de los océanos y su relación con la regulación del clima, así como lo que le está sucediendo a las barreras de coral, que tan importantes son para mantener los océanos sanos y garantizar su biodiversidad. La semana pasada salimos del océano para tratar el importantísimo tema de la deforestación. Hablamos brevemente de qué es la deforestación y por qué se hace, así como por qué la deforestación contribuye a la liberación de gases de efecto invernadero. En este vídeo tratamos uno de los factores más contribuyentes del calentamiento global. Se trata de los combustibles fósiles, para lo cual trataremos su definición y origen, así como su relación con el calentamiento global y alternativas. In this video, we will talk about fossil fuels, where they come from, how we use them daily, and how they are the main factor contributing to global warming. We will review some historical data and the increase of the use of fossil fuels since the Industrial Revolution. We will answer 3 questions. Question number 1, what are fossil fuels and how do we use them? Question number 2, how are fossil fuels related to global warming? And question number 3, what could some alternatives be to the use of fossil fuels? Let's begin our presentation by answering question number 1. What are fossil fuels and how do we use them? Fossil fuels are deposits made out of decomposing organic materials, such as plants and animals, that have taken millions of years to form. They are non-renewable, which means that they cannot be replaced by natural processes at a pace fast enough to keep up with the consumption. They are also rich in carbon, so when they are burned, they release this carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. And because they are rich in carbon and other greenhouse gases, they are the primary contributors to global warming. Fossil fuels are present in our daily lives, from fueling our means of transportation to the production of several materials, such as plastic or the electricity in our homes. There are 3 major types of fossil fuels. Coal comes from sedimentary rocks formed up to 360 million years ago from compacted vegetation settled under layers of mud. Depending on the amount of carbon found on these sediments, coal can be classified into 4 categories. Coal constitutes one of the main sources of energy worldwide. As we will see later, because of carbon emissions, the use of coal has decreased mainly all over the world. And what is coal used for? Mainly as fuel to produce electricity. In coal-fueled power plants, there are turbines that are driven by the stream created after the combustion of coal. Coal can also be used for making steel or other products such as carbon fibers and foams, as well as medicine and heating. Oil or petroleum, it is a liquid fossil fuel composed of carbon and hydrogen, formed up to 250 million years ago when organic organisms such as algae and other plants settled at the bottom of the sea and got eventually buried. Oil constitutes the world's primary fuel source of transportation, since after it is extracted, it will be transformed to create gasoline, propane, kerosene, and jet fuel, and other petroleum products such as heating oil. Oil is also used to produce other products such as plastic and paint. But what is oil used for? Mainly, oil is, as said before, transformed into transportation fuel, but petroleum can also be found in other daily products, such as clothes, cooking utensils, furniture, and even some agricultural products, such as fertilizers or insecticides that contain petroleum. And natural gas, also formed millions of years ago. Natural gas is composed primarily of methane, a greenhouse gas. The main techniques to access and extract natural gas are drilling and fracking, which basically is injecting high pressure water into a rock to extract the gas from it. Both oil and natural gas have surpassed coal as the main source of electricity. But what is natural gas used for? Natural gas is a source of energy to generate electricity for heating, for transportation, and for production. Question number 2. How are fossil fuels related to global warming? Fossil fuels produce large quantities of carbon dioxide when burned and are the largest driver of global climate change. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that in 2018, 89% of global CO2 emissions came from fossil fuels and industry. The burning of fossil fuels for energy began during the Industrial Revolution. It was during this historical period that fossil fuels began to play a major role in industrial processes as well as transportation. However, although humanity has clearly benefited from the innovations surge during this time, statistics show the increase of carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere since that time. Reporting, for example, that since the beginning of the 20th century, the emissions started to increase significantly, and from 1970 to 2010, 78% of the total of greenhouse gas emissions come from fossil fuel combustion and industrial processes. For example, although coal supplies a third of all energy worldwide, 44% of the world total in carbon dioxide emissions comes from burning coal, whereas the use of oil, petroleum, represents about a third of the global total of emissions, and natural gas, although cleaner than coal and petroleum, accounts for a fifth of the world's total of emissions. Of these three, coal is the largest source of global temperature rise. We can see now how since the Industrial Revolution and for the last 150 years, humanity has increased the emissions and concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere derived from the industrial activities that we depend on for electricity, transportation, and a large number of daily use products. The emission of carbon dioxide comes from burning these fossil fuels. We burn these fossil fuels to generate energy that we use to generate electricity, fuel transportation, and produce plastic, paint, and other products. But how do we burn them? Coal, for example, is mostly burned underground. The burning coal heats water that creates steam, which later spins the blades of a turbine, transforming heat energy from burning coal into mechanical energy that spins the turbine engine. This turbine is used to power a generator that transforms the mechanical energy into electrical energy. Oil is burned in a similar way to coal. Oil can be burned to heat water to create steam, to generate electricity, or burned under pressure to produce hot exhaust gases, which spin a turbine to generate electricity. Crude oil is refined into petroleum products through a process called distillation that has 3 steps: separation, conversion, and treatment. And natural gas, like oil and coal, needs to be processed before it can be used, since when extracted, it contains several components that need to be removed before its use. Natural gas is also burned to generate energy that we later use in heating, cooking, and transportation. Natural gas is believed to be the cleanest of all fossil fuels, since it releases less air pollutants than coal and oil when processed through combustion. However, it is still a fossil fuel and accounts for a fifth of the world's total carbon emissions. However, not only the burning of fossil fuels is impacting our environment, but also the way that they are being extracted and transported. How? For example, coal mining processes wash acid runoff into rivers and streams, polluting the water currents. Concentrations of methane also happen in underground mines, and so this gas needs to be let out of the mine in order to create a safe place to work for miners. So not only coal burning releases carbon dioxide, but coal mining also releases important quantities of methane into the atmosphere. One of the clearest pieces of evidence when it comes to pollution from the use of fossil fuels are oil spills. These happen when the liquid fossil fuel gets released into the environment, especially into seas and rivers, since most of these accidents occur during oil transportation by ships or at oil refineries after drilling and fracking. These two techniques, drilling and fracking, are also used to extract natural gas and can lead to leaks that can contaminate the surrounding areas with radioactive materials. In addition, during the fracking process to extract oil or natural gas, small amounts of methane are released into the atmosphere. And although natural gas is believed to be cleaner than coal and oil because it does not release as much carbon as the others, it is mainly composed of methane, which is able to trap heat at a larger capacity than carbon dioxide. As we can see now, fossil fuels have a big environmental impact when they are processed, but also when they are extracted. Apart from the emissions of greenhouse gases that contribute and explain global warming, the extraction and use of fossil fuels also leads to land degradation, for example, when clearing forests and preparing land to excavate large mineral deposits, as well as air and water pollution. So what could some alternatives be to the use of fossil fuels? Humanity is very dependent on fossil fuels. We use them to generate electricity, to cook our food, and to heat our homes, as well as to fuel our transportation and by consuming products on a daily basis. However, since the Industrial Revolution, the emissions of greenhouse gases have increased significantly, leading to alarming rates of heat concentration and environmental impact. In addition, fossil fuels are non-renewable, which means that they cannot be replaced once finished. Science and statistics are telling us that we need a greener and more sustainable alternative to cover our electricity and transportation needs. Renewable energy seems to be the answer. As we will study in our next video, some examples of renewable options are wind and solar energy, as well as geothermal, ocean, and hydroelectrical energy. Acabamos de ver el impacto tan importante que tienen los combustibles fósiles en el calentamiento global, tanto durante su extracción como durante su procesamiento. Ahora vamos a ver la práctica para entender mejor cómo funcionan los combustibles fósiles. There are two activities for today's lesson. First of all, do some research about the countries that concentrate the largest amounts of greenhouse gas emissions due to the extraction and use of fossil fuels. Create a graphic and study the main activities that constitute these emissions. And number two, study in what countries or regions there is a bigger number of coal mines and oil and natural gas refineries. Espero que os haya gustado el vídeo y nos vemos la semana que viene. Muchas gracias.